Very good evening to one and all present here. I welcome you all on the behalf of Government Home Science College to the second day of Textile Week 2020. Now, I will invite Mrs. Chaya Verma, Head Clothing and Textiles Department, to say a few words.
A very good evening to everyone. Welcome to the second day of the virtual celebration of Textile Week. Every year, Textile Week is organized by the P.A.N.A.C.H.E Club of the Department of Clothing and Textiles, Government Home Science College, Chandigarh. The main aim of this celebration is to give vast exposure of our rich cultural heritage to the students. Several talks, workshops, and competitions are organized during this week to make them aware about our excellent traditional craftsmanship and stimulate their creativity. Textiles are one of the oldest industries known to the civilization, and it flourished in India from time immemorial. Indian textile is as diverse as its culture, and which speaks a lot about its rich tradition and cultural heritage. The Mughal poets have described the muslin and brocades by different poetic names. We all know, like Abe Rama, flowing water, Shabnam, morning dew, bath thawa, woven air, etc. The textiles have affected and have been affected by cultural, political, and religious history of man throughout the world. No other land has enjoys such a profusion of creative energies for the production of textiles as the subcontinent of India. The interaction of people, invaders, indigenous tribes, traders, and explorers has built a complex cultural legendary for its validity and color. The Indian textiles are quite famous for their artistic elegance and intricate designs, but most of them are not being produced now because of various reasons. We have not seen several textiles which were very famous in past, and I'm afraid that our new generation will not be able to witness how rich our traditional textiles were. The talk on the textile conservation was planned keeping in mind the need of the hour. The students who are coming to study fashion designing and textiles are studying about these textiles in their subjects, but they are not able to see them. This talk will definitely help them to understand the various aspects of textile conservation. I am very happy to share that today's eminent speakers, Dr. Simmi Bhagat, Madam Smita Singh, and Dr. Rohini Arora are experts in their field and wholeheartedly devoted to the textile conservation. They have vast practical exposure of the subject. I request them to share their field experience also during their presentation. My special thanks to Dr. Rohini Arora for introducing Dr. Simmi Bhagat and Madam Smita Singh to us, but I'm sure this association will go a long way. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us today in today's session. Now, I request Ms. Hina to formally welcome and introduce our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. As told by Mrs. Chaya Verma, we have three eminent personalities with us. Our first speaker for today's session is Dr. Rohini, Assistant Professor, Guru Gobind Singh College for Women. She is an academic and research consultant at reputed institutions. She has a vast experience in field of Indian traditional crafts. She initiated the project on revival of Chamba embroidery in 2007 as a PhD research area and is associated with capacity building of the artisans till date. She was empaneled as designer in textile and clothing with the Office of Development Commissioner Handicrafts. She has presented her work at various prestigious platforms as presentations, research papers, and exhibitions at national and international level. Her recent exhibition was held at IIC and was sponsored at ICCR and Embassy of Serbia and Bern and displayed at art centers of Switzerland. Welcome Dr. Rohini to today's session. Our second speaker for today's evening is Dr. Simmi Bhagat. Associate Professor at Department of Fabric and Apparel Science, Lady Irwin College, Delhi University, and founder member of Textile and Clothing Research Center. She has been involved actively in teaching from last 28 years. She has many projects to her credit with development commissioners, ILO, Ministry of Textiles. She has conducted various workshops, presented papers, and reviewed articles for numerous conferences and national journals. She has also been associated with various organizations involved in women training for skill upgradation and income generation. Last but not the least, she has undertaken training in textile conservation from Florence, Italy. We welcome you all, ma'am, for today's session. Our third speaker for the day is Miss Smita Singh, founder member and chief editor at Textile and Clothing Research Center, New Delhi. She has specialization in conservation of traditional textiles from British Museum, London. She is multi-talented and extending her services as textile conservation consultant at Textile Heritage Conservation, New Delhi, Present House Museum, New Delhi, School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, Gyan Museum, Jaipur, to name a few. She has executed numerous conservation projects and training programs. She has various scholarships on her name. Recently, she got an exposure through international training projects on textile and costume conservation from Florence, Italy. Currently, she is working with the City Palace Museum, Udaipur, on the Royal Mewar textiles. I welcome you, ma'am, and looking forward for an interesting session. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Rohini to start the today's session.
I'm really grateful, Hina, for thank you for such an elaborate introduction, and I'm also really grateful to Dr. Sudha Katyal, Principal, Government Home Science College, and Dr. Chaya Verma for this opportunity to share my insights on textile conservation. I have really some good memories to cherish when I was teaching, when I taught here in 2015, and really thankful to for the love and compassion that I have received from the department. And it feels really wonderful to connect again through this platform. So now I would like to begin with my presentation. So. So, the topic for my today's presentation is textile conservation in context with archaeological textiles and ethnographic textiles. Here, I'll be discussing why these historically important textiles needs to be conserved and their relevance in textile research. In conservation, we preserve the conditions of textiles for its prolonged life. However, in archaeological textiles, it is most challenging and difficult as we are handling textiles that have been taken out from the archaeological excavations. They have been buried under the ground for almost hundreds or thousands of years, and they are extremely delicate to handle, and they may deteriorate in immediate environment. So, here I'll be discussing so here I'll be discussing few examples, such surviving example that are housed in the collection of Central Asian Antiquities, National Museum, New Delhi, and these are really ancient pieces dated back to dated back between third to 12th century, and they have been discovered or excavated from the ancient trade route known as Silk Road in Chinese Turkestan, and they have these are vital historical evidences, and they are conserved with great care, and they provide lot of important information on composite cultural traditions of Central Asia. Here we all can see the first specimen, that is the fragment of a tapestry which dates back to third or fourth dates back between third fourth century, and it is from Lulan, which is an important site on Silk Road. This piece shows male face with caduceus, and it shows remarkable workmanship in terms of technique and colors, which has survived thousands of years. The next specimen is equally fascinating, which is a fragment of thousand Buddha figure, and it dated back to 9th to 10th century. It is an embroidered piece in minute chain stitch in silk threads. This piece is from Dhunang, an important site on Silk Road. This rare textiles is very delicate, and we can see it has been worn out from many places, but it is again beautifully, it has been preserved with great skill. The next piece is an embroidered silk hanging, which is again very delicate textile from 7th to 8th century, excavated from the same site. It features all over pattern with birds and butterflies. So the point here is to note that these three pieces are very ancient textiles which are conserved with great care and precision. They are source of some really significant information which could be of lot of interest for the researchers. So I have come across one such study from the archaeological textile newsletter, where the researcher has been inspired from the costumes seen on these ancient Greek art forms, like this vase, where this image we can see, then this image from the bowl, and here we can see some figurines from the temple. So the researcher has actually reconstructed these tight fitting and strikingly patterned garments for the in the research, and by reinventing the old technique, which was very different from knitting. So this is a very interesting study that I have come across, and I would like to share with the students here who are listening our presentation today. So next, we come to the ethnographic textiles. Basically, ethnographic textiles belongs to particular community or a group of people and tells a lot about their culture and their traditions. Even these textiles are susceptible to damage, as they may be few decades or maybe hundreds of years old, and they are usually worn out or used textiles. And or they may be soiled, so it is again very important to conserve and preserve them, because they are again inherent sources of technical and historical information. Here we can see the Sanchi Fulkari, which is made by the Jat tribes from Rohtak, Hisar, and Haryana. And here the motifs that they embroider tells us lot about their daily activities, social activities, customs, and traditions. So, for the presentation, I have picked up two such rare textiles from Norris, an exhibition which featured many arts of Deccan in 2015 in National Museum. These art forms have been conserved and put for public display in their finest forms. The piece that caught my attention was this figurative kalamkari that was used as in thalposh. It is a rare surviving figurative hand painting on cotton from 17th century from Golconda region. This spectacular piece is a world in itself, as it displays figures from all regions of the world, and it can be identified from their costumes, the headgears, and the accessories they are holding. For example, in the center, we can see a palace and a Persian king seated in it, and there is a attendant who is wearing the British cap. So this is very interesting. And here at the left corner, we can see some Chinese traders, uh, the Chinese traders, and that is evident from their costumes they are wearing and the vase that they are holding in their hands. But apart from these, and if you can see, all the other three corners also tells a story, which is very interesting to know. But the most interesting is the yogi who is seated on a deer skin and contemplating a pineapple. The pineapple is a New World fruit brought to the Deccan by Portuguese traders. It must have been newly arrived when this kalamkari was made. So here it is. Here's we can see how these uh, uh, fabrics beautifully convey the details of some ancient period. And here we can also see the restoration work that has been carried to preserve this piece from deterioration and beautifully displayed in the exhibition. The next specimen from the exhibition is an extraordinary textile and one of the grandest surviving historic embroideries of India. This is a 40 feet long embroidered temple hanging with scenes from Ramayana. It is important because it comes from the region which is popular for Kasuti and Kalamkari tradition. This kind of embroidery is new and has lot of scope for research. This piece is also conserved and put in display for public view. Luckily, I and Simmi ma'am got chance to work on this rare specimen and we identified its stitches which are published in National Museum publication. So, apart from these historically important textiles, each of us are having some prized heirlooms at homes, in departments, or must have seen them in private collections. Each one of them has some story to tell. Like this particular one belongs to my late grandfather, and it is almost 150 years old. It was made by his Pernani for her daughter, and it was used to cover the palanquin which traveled from Sialkot to Chakroi in Jammu, almost 20 miles. So it is a very interesting story, and I'm sure each heirloom must have some story to tell. So these pieces are equally important to preserve and conserve. But unfortunately, unlike museum pieces, these textiles are usually neglected and mishandled. Like these are some of the images from my field study when I was doing research on chamba rumals. I get to see some of the very old specimen of pahari cholis in private collections. So here we can see how badly they are kept. Like they are not, some of them are even torn. These are some more images. So as a textile enthusiast, we must be sensitive towards handling and storage of these textiles. With some awareness and by practicing preventive care, we can prevent further damage to these textiles. So the some basics about how to handle these objects is that we should always hold them with clean hands. Gloves should be worn, and they should always be placed in trays when we are moving them. We should always be using pencils, and sharp objects should definitely be not placed close to these objects. So and even when we are storing them, they should always be, kept in flat storage, and which are then kept in covered shelves or boxes. And their folding of these textiles is really important, and it should be done with great care. Like the fold should always we should always keep some kind of medicated tissue paper or cotton cloth between the folds and the layers of the textiles, and then it should be placed or it should be stored. Full lay And like here how these should be stacked in the shelves of the almiras. Like the heavy object should always be placed in the bottom, and they should be neatly folded and then kept in the shelves. If the object is 3D, then stuffing should be done while storing them. In case shells are not available, they can be kept in the boxes with the right folding. Size of boxes should be accurate and the object should not move when placed inside them. So that is how we can actually cover the extra space. So, in case of large flat textiles, they should always be rolled over the padded rollers. So, these are some of the few preventive care that we all should follow while handling these kind of rare and very valuable objects. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Rohini, for sharing your practical experience in the textile conservation field with us. I'm sure that our viewers will definitely get benefited by this. If
Thank you.
anyone has any questions, welcome. If anyone has any questions, kindly post the same in the chat box. We will take all the questions at the end of the session. Now, I would like to invite our second speaker, Dr. Simmi Bhagat, who is Associate Professor in Lady Irwin College in New Delhi. Ma'am, please proceed the session.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Andana. It is so nice to be connected with the Government Home Science College, Chandigarh. And I think first thanks to Rohini because she is the connection between us. And then, of course, Professor Katyal, principal of the college, and head of the department, Dr. Chaya. Thank you so much for inviting us for today's webinar. And I would like to show, I hope if one of you could confirm if I am audible.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay, thank you. Because my network is troubling, so I just wanted to check. Okay, so I will proceed with my presentation, which is on basics of textile conservation. And I think to begin with that, you all have got a very beautiful glimpse by Rohini, I would say. She's already introduced it so beautifully by showing the exclusive pieces, which even we haven't seen till now. And she's done a good research in showing us the pieces. So, I'm just trying to come back to why we need. So we all know textiles are an integral part of human history. We study them as textile heritage because they carry stories of the past, as Rohini just said also. So we know some of these pieces are art forms for us. They have a raw material which they carry of the past and which gives us lot of information of history through the materials. Then looking at the dyes, looking at the weaving, looking at the technology, it is telling us a lot about the technology as well as the knowledge of the chemistry because dyes are there, right? Then there are skills. We have seen, we study, there are skills in weaving, there are skills in, spinning. You see so much which actually is there to enrich next generation. As she just mentioned, with some of her beautiful pieces, they are part of our heirloom also, right? And we all are absolutely aware when we study history that how textiles have played a special role in giving India its freedom. So that's what I would in small points say, that this is the need of the old textiles or the past textiles which have been there, right? So that's the need to save them. And how we can save them. As students, as researchers, we are documenting them, learning about the techniques. Then in the new generation, we are continuing the production. That is the new weavers, जो उनके बच्चे हैं weavers के, हम मोटिवेट करते रहते हैं. उनके माँ बाप तो मोटिवेट कर रहे हैं, जब हम एज रिसर्चर भी जाते हैं हम मोटिवेट करते हैं उनको कि प्लीज इसको प्रोड्यूस करो, या हम रिवाइवल स्टडीज करते हैं कि हम पुराने मेथड्स को रिवाइव करें सो दैट we are able to continue the production methods which have been followed traditionally. Then as consumers, if I am buying traditional textiles, I am actually helping to save, because if I buy, then only they produce and I buy, so the chain has to go on. And the last bit is, which is done by the conservators, that is preserving the actual old pieces, which are the storytellers for all of us, right? So that's what we say, the need for conservation. I hope you've understood when I say need for conservation is preservation, the legacy of our collective cultural heritage, which enriches our lives, that has to be preserved. So our responsibility is to maintain and to protect this heritage, so that we make sure that, or we ensure that there is a access to historic and cultural information, and also the aesthetic pleasure that they provide, these pieces which they provide, like the ones which we have just just seen archaeological and ethnographic, pieces which Rohini just showed us, right? So all this work, it will continue only if somebody is there to preserve it. That is done through conservation. So if I have to define conservation, I would say it is a profession which is devoted to the preservation is the word, preservation of the cultural property for the future. Now let's see what is this cultural property, right? So cultural property could be objects, as we have just seen. In textiles we have so many pieces, but besides that there could be other collections, there could be other specimens, it could be in structures, buildings, it could be site, Harappan site, that is also a cultural property, right? Which can be having some kind of artistic, scientific, historic, religious, and social significance. So these are some very, very important 5 pointers which can actually describe a cultural property. So conservation is essentially, as we just said, an operation which is aimed at prolonging the life of an object, and it results in preventing for shorter or longer period its natural or accidental deterioration. So what are we trying to do? Basically we are trying to hold on the deterioration process, or we are trying to delay the deterioration process or slow down the deterioration process. This is what we call conservation. So now apply this definition to textile conservation, basically referring to the processes by which we are preserving or caring or maintaining these textiles from future damage. That's how we define textile conservation. And this concept of textile preservation applies to a wide range of objects which have textiles in them. It could be costumes, it could be heirloom pieces, as she has just shown. You could have shawls, you could have carpets, you could have tapestries. Then even pieces where, like umbrella is also made of a textile. It could be footwear, shoes, some part of textile is in it also, right? Dolls. So all these pieces, because dolls are also dressed up with these things. So all these artifacts, they require a specialized care. And there are programs which actually train you to become a conservator. And you may be there, but of course you understand this science, but you have to have a professional background. That's why a professional conservator is essential for taking care of these textiles. Now this is one example which has been taken from Caring for Textiles website, and you can see it is something. If you see, it is that needle point embroidery. How beautiful this embroidery is. It belongs to some 17th 18th century a piece, and it was so badly deteriorated because of, I think it article said it is because of the dry cleaning. The whole piece got deteriorated. So this is how, just look at how conservator has beautifully taken care of this piece, and this is how it looks like after conservation. So now moving on to what actually is conservation, what all you do in it. Conservation basically includes these first 4 points. You are examining, you have to do documentation, you have to give treatment, you have to do the preventive care. And all these 4 points, examination, documentation, treatment, preventive care, they are being supported by research and education. Nothing can go without research and education. It doesn't mean examination that you look at a piece and you write. You need a lot of research in this. By end of the presentation, when I tell you, so जो इसकी ये 4 points हैं, उसके लिए आपको कैसी क्वालिटीज चाहिए टू बिकम अ गुड conservator. And I think we have one of the best conservator with us, Smita, here. And I can actually, looking at her, knowing her, I can tell you what qualities a conservator requires. Okay. So this is another quote which I really loved it. This is by another textile conservator, Julia Brennan. I have attended her webinars and been in interaction with her. And this is her quote. She says, "We aim to take the best of both Western and empirical and local homegrown practices, including indigenous knowledge and skills from the elders, and tailor our stewardship into the most suitable and sustainable model." So when I say conservation, कि ये 4 steps है. Of course, they are the 4 steps, but you can innovate. You can make your own systems which come under these headings also. Okay. So let's see what all goes into all these. First is examination. As the word says, it basically means the investigation of the structure, materials, condition of the cultural property. Over here, it is the textile, including the identification of the extent and causes of alteration and deterioration. So this is the first step, to learn to look at a textile when we are doing conservation. कि आप textile को सिर्फ देखा ये नहीं, you have to learn to look at a textile because it tells a story. So you explore the story, you look at the origin, you have to understand the behavior of the textile because वो कितना पुराना हो गया, कैसे आगे बिहेव करेगा. आपको पूरी मटेरियल साइंस होनी चाहिए टेक्सटाइल की. अगर वो कॉटन है, कॉटन कैसे बिहेव करेगा, किस सर्कमस्टांसिस में क्या चलेगा, किस कंडीशन में कैसे, एवरीथिंग. What is the significance? If it has some emotional or spiritual contact with the artifact, अगर ये नहीं होगी आपके पास आर्टिफैक्ट आया, आपको लगा गंदा है, चलो जी इसको धो दो क्योंकि मुझे तो साफ करना है. दैट इज नॉट द एम ऑफ अ कंजर्वेटर. यू शुड नो उस प्रोडक्ट की वैल्यू क्या है. अगर उस पे स्टेन है, वो स्टेन अगर कोई स्टोरी बता रहा है, you don't have to remove such a stain, right? So you understand the condition. Is it historic? Do we need to retain it? उसकी जो भी कंडीशन है उस समय, उसको हमें रिटेन करना है कि हमें उसको पॉसिबल है कि हम उसको क्लीन कर सकते हैं या उसको हम कवर करते हैं. ओके. So keeping records is very essential for long-term care of collections. Okay. And accuracy of whatever you are doing to the object has to be paramount. Okay. Which becomes very, very important. So you carefully examine, you look at the fiber content, you look at the fabric construction. So, you can see object comes to you, you carefully examine it. Then you take their micrographs, उसको आप माइक्रोस्कोप के नीचे स्टडी करते हो, उसकी साइंटिफिक एनालिसिस करते हैं. यू स्टार्ट लुकिंग फॉर डैमेजेस उसके अंदर जो हुए हैं. यू अंडरस्टैंड द एजेंट्स, सॉरी, you understand the agents of deterioration, kya kya ho sakte hain, because the time is short. Otherwise we could have even talked about what are the agents of deterioration which can actually be helping you in analyzing ki okay, this is the kind of strategy I can make for this particular object, right? So then next thing we just said is the documentation. The documentation, as the word says, is a recording in a permanent format of information derived from conservation activity. You can do a very detailed process which can be following examination, or it can be done simultaneously. So you will have condition reports where each detail which is about the object, especially जब म्यूजियम में होगा तो उसका इन्वेंटरी होगा, वो कैसा ऑब्जेक्ट है, उसकी क्या हिस्ट्री है, वो आप सब चीजें उसकी कंडीशन रिपोर्ट में लिखी जाती हैं. Then some museums also have computer collection management systems. So you can include photographs, you will have all details about that object in terms of provenance, kya hai, chain of custody. As Rohini was giving example, कि सियालकोट से चला, कहाँ गया, फिर कहाँ आया, पूरी उसकी chain of custody from where it has moved to where. Then historical information of that object, scientific analysis. If it requires some digital analysis, you do everything about fiber, fabric, costume patterns. अगर costume है तो उसका pattern बनाना बहुत जरूरी है कि this is how it looks. Then materials used in embellishments, उसका अगर embroidery है, उसका stitch analysis करोगे and things like that. So this is how, photo document. This is one of the object in our collection which I just put pictures for you, to understand how photographic documentation. अगर costume है उसका front back भी लोगे, दूसरा object है उसका भी front back लेंगे, and you write about the materials कि कौन से materials हैं. This is how you make the patterns for the costume. प्रॉपर स्केल पे बने होने चाहिए, डायमेंशंस बहुत क्लियर होनी चाहिए. अगर ऑब्जेक्ट आर्टिफैक्ट में कोई मोटिव्स हैं, मोटिव्स की डिटेल्स बड़ा क्लियरली डालते हैं सो दैट यू कैन नो दिस ऑब्जेक्ट बिलोंग्स टू 1920 एंड दीज वर द काइंड ऑफ मोटिव्स. सो इट इज काइंड ऑफ टेलिंग यू स्टोरी कि ट्री ऑफ लाइफ मोटिव जो है इस समय भी था, लाइक दैट. Then these are some of the microscopic images, which have been taken for fiber identification so that you are very sure that this is like a wool cotton cotton blend and this is silk and things like that, right? Then you do this, you mark every place, you mark all the damages in it, usko scale pe lena hai so that you know when you were documenting this was the size. You mark all the fibers to understand ki okay, these are the different colors which are there. Agar mujhe usko color bleeding uska test karna hai, I have to do for each and every fiber like that. You just look at this image on the right, if uspe rust marks hain and things like that. So everything, agar koi purana manufacturer ka label hai, which is like the most important part, so you have to document everything about it. The third thing is the treatment. The treatment basically, as the term you understand, it means the alteration. आप क्या करोगे उसके साथ, कुछ physical aspect उसका change करोगे cultural property का, या chemically, which is aimed at prolonging its existence. So treatment may consist of either stabilization or restoration, but make sure treatment needs to be visible and distinguishable from the origin. I have put this image of ICOM, so which is, you should know the code of ethics from the International Conservation of Council of Museums, which have given some codes where you have to respect original, you don't have to remove anything which is original, treatment has to be reversible, you consider the significance of damages, how treatment can change the significance of the textile. Then treatment should also be the last resort, because they say less is more. We should look for something other. But treatments would involve, these are some steps which I have just shown, like agar creases hain object mein, because creases are also harmful, you could do humidification for it, for crease reduction. You could use controlled moisture to relax fiber, or overall humidification. So you could do mechanical cleaning, which is kind of the first step in cleaning, always procedure, so which is most common and also considered to be passive of all cleaning methods. It helps you in reducing dirt from the surface. So don't use it just for the sake of it. You have to make sure ki how you are using it. The vacuum cleaning is done for it. You could use your micro suctions to clean the surface dust, etc. Then you could use sponge cleaning, which is soft latex free polyurethane foam sponge, cosmetic sponges which remove surface oiling through gentle action. As you can see in the two images, how the girl is using. Cosmetic sponges are available, which you people use, right? So you could use that for doing. Then we have, this is like surface cleaning. Then there are objects which might require wet cleaning. Wet cleaning, remember, it is done only by hand washing, okay? And usually with a detergent or a surfactant, which has to be of the right, not too much of alkaline and things. So there are special surfactants for wet cleaning also. So it can be good for improving, remember, the appearance and stability of a textile. But sometimes you have to be very sure whether your object can take that, because इसके साथ ये होता है ना, जब हम wet clean करते हैं तो हमारे वो softer हो जाता है, उसकी acidity और discolor, you can remove that also, acidity part. But you have to be very very sure that before wet cleaning, one, wet cleaning is irreversible. और ICOM हमें क्या कहता है, आपके सारे process जो होने चाहिए वो reversible होने चाहिए. So be very sure when you take a decision. One can remove part of the textile's history, dyes bleed कर सकती हैं, wet fibers जो हैं वो heavy होते हैं, right? उसकी dimensional stability हिल सकती है उसकी वजह से, and so the artifact is more vulnerable to damage. So one has to be very careful. So remember, wet cleaning would always be risky. Okay. Then this is another image which has been taken from 1880, another same site, Caring for Textiles, because I'm really fond of this site. So this is another artifact, how it was and what it has been after wet cleaning. You can see the impact, right? So of course it is very good, but wo isko chahiye tha is stage mein aana, it was fine, because these stains were not giving any history to it. So the artifact can show you how white it has become after that. So it really depends on the artifact. Then another part is you can use your treatments to strengthen the weak areas of the object. So where you could use stabilization treatments, which are intended to maintain the integrity of the cultural property and to minimize deterioration. So stitching, stabilization and repairs, always only hand stitches. They are, these, especially agar usme splits ho, tears ho, holes ho, they are all very damageable. They are more, they can create more damage because khud bade ho sakte hain, right? right? So textile conservation treatment can help prevent more damage from occurring, support the damage area, उस पे कुछ support material लगा सकते हैं, often done with very fine stitches and fine threads. Selection of stitches and threads must be carefully done, and so we all have lot of research done on this, what kind to use and things like that. So this is another curator who says good stitching must be strong but not too strong, tight but not too tight, smooth supporting, nor unobtrusive. To achieve this end, we rely on an understanding of the material and operations involved that is never articulated. So one has to, you have a lot of scope. I would say in India, we have a lot of scope to do lot of work in textile conservation, and we can come up with, treatment methods which are can be a big support for the textile conservation. Then restoration treatment procedures are intended to return cultural property to a known or assumed state, often through the addition of non-original material. So, like, this is just one example which we did at Florence, ki agar wo aise, it is just a test sample how you can bring it back, and good example of restoration, you can say. So ultimately, what is conservation is all direct and indirect actions which are aimed at increasing the life expectancy of an element or a group of elements, new or damaged, stable or unstable, of heritage value, in order to make them accessible to public. Generally, we say conservation is of two types. One is preventive, which is very passive, and curative, interventive, or active action. Actions are taken, but make sure actions taken are to minimize or slow down the rate of deterioration and to prevent damage to collections. One has to aim to increase the life of the artifact. It is said, it is again, in one of the webinars where Julia had quoted, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Yeah, so I really like this quote, so I'm presenting it over here. So just to understand the difference, this is the second last slide, which says, preventive conservation is basically a very important element of museum. You are basically providing favorable environment for all the artifacts in terms of humidity, in terms of light, in terms of temperature, so that they are in the protective environment. Okay. So whether they are in care, whether they are in storage, whether they are in display or in transit, even moving, you should be very sure what is the right temperature, humidity, and light conditions. These are like natural, we can say, agents of deterioration which one has to look after. So carefully monitor the conditions of the collection to determine, again, to see when the artifact requires conservation work and the services of a qualified conservator. Then curative conservation, as the word says, you are actually intervening into it. It refers to the act by a conservator, which is direct interaction between the conservator and the cultural material. So these interventive treatments, could involve cleaning. We have just seen, which you just saw, so your wet cleaning, stabilizing, repair, वो सारे जो हैं वो हमारे curative हैं, because you are actually operating the, you are touching the artifact. So it is essential that conservator fully justifies any such work. There has to be a complete documentation. अगर आपने पुराना कुछ निकाला है या उस पे नया कुछ किया हुआ है, उसका जो पिछला था वो भी हम रखते हैं, पूरी डिटेल उसकी डॉक्यूमेंट में क्या हुआ था. So before, during, after, सब चीजें they have to be, so that it rules out chances of any doubts later on about the object. Because it is always said like that. I say, I am not giving you example of a doctor over here. नहीं तो हम यही कहते हैं कि conservators are like, I say pediatrician. जैसे pediatrician के जैसे ही होते हैं, बिल्कुल बच्चा रोता है, आपको पता होता है आपको क्या करना है. यहाँ सिर्फ रोता है, वो बताता कुछ नहीं है. यहाँ पे तो ऑब्जेक्ट रोता भी नहीं है, बट सिम्टम्स देता है फिर भी. So you have to see it, what it requires, and take care. So conservator has a lot in his hand. It is responsibility of a big cultural property they have with them. So they need to make sure whatever they are doing it with complete knowledge. Okay. and so I would not talk about what is the difference between curative and preventive, though it is very much more science and that can be accomplished by everyone and things like that. And these are some of the references which I use to make this presentation. And now I can just talk to you about in terms of scope, or in terms of what one can do. So this is just a brief outline about what textile conservation is. But Smita is going to show you beautiful works what a conservator can do pre and post, and so that would be just following. But I would say this is the most upcoming field, and to become a conservator, one, and I'm really telling you, I'm looking at Smita and saying these, you should have a sense of art. You should appreciate the intricacies which are involved in any piece of art. It would require, of course, basic knowledge of sciences. You should know your chemistry, physics very well. Then you should also have knowledge of history, techniques, processes of Indian as well as world textiles, and we study all that in master's program, and how materials interact, age, and decay. So this is all going to come from your science. And about the qualities, you should be very passionate and persistent for extensive research. So this is like an underlined thing. You should be art lover, absolutely passionate about the work of a master artist. एक चीज देखो, जैसे अभी रोहिणी भी दिखा रही, हमारे अंदर से आती है फिर वो, you want to talk about a piece like that. So in India we have short term courses, which are, there are degrees also in art conservation. So like National Museum Institute of History of Art Conservation and Museology, they have a MA and a PhD program, but which is in conservation, not specialized only for textile conservation. But then, like in Delhi University, what we do in master's program, we have a course in textile conservation. Then the Delhi Institute of Heritage Research and Management, they also have. There are other organizations like, INTAC, IGNCA, they also have some short-term programs where one can do, and you can be involved as a textile conservator in museums, as a private, you can be part of well-known conservators, textile conservators like Smita and other people who are there, because they have projects, they can hire you. But remember, you should have the passion in you to be a conservator. So this is what I just briefly, I don't know how much time I have taken, but wanted to quickly tell you what textile conservation is, a short span of time, and what you can take it from here.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
So over
It
to
was
you.
really a
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was really a wonderful and interesting presentation. Ma'am, we are really thankful to you for sharing your immense knowledge and expertise with us. Now, moving towards the last session of
Thank
the
you,
day.
Chanda. It's pleasure.
Now, moving to the last session of the day, I would like to invite our next speaker, Miss Samita Singh, who is Textile Conservation Consultant, New Delhi. Ma'am, please proceed the session. Ma- Ma'am, your voice is not audible.
Uh,
Unmute. Yes, yes, it's
oh,
okay.
yeah, yeah. Now it is audible?
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So
Please
thank
start.
you, Pratibha. Thank you. A very warm good evening to all of you. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Heartfelt thank you to Dr. Katyal and Dr. Chaya, and to all the organizers, and to Rohini. It is fantastic to hear what all you're doing in Chandigarh related to textiles. When Rohini approached me to explore the possibility of discussing about preservation of textiles, I was delighted and to talk about textile conservation. That is what I do as profession. Uh, Work with institutions, that is heritage institutions, preserving textile objects and their stories. And I thought it would be fantastic initiative to introduce this field to the students, which is very important in India. So thank you all of you who have joined this evening. And my today's presentation has three parts. So initially, I will talk about the objective of textile conservation and then my journey in this field very briefly. And at the end, I will try to explain about textile conservation processes. I'm first going to pull up my screen. Should I? Yeah, I'll just share it. I'm not having a sharing option here. Should I share it? How? Hello? Pratibha, I can't share
Yes,
my screen. That option is not coming here.
there is option on the screen, ma'am. Share
It says
screen.
it's saying stop screen. Oh, now it is coming. Share
Okay.
screen. Okay. I'll
Okay.
just open it. Just a minute. I'll open this one and now this one and
Application window. Go to the application window, ma'am.
Pratibha, can you please confirm that it is
Okay.
visible?
Okay, ma'am.
It's visible?
Yes, ma'am. It's visible now.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm talking about textile conservation in museums. So when you enter in the museum, there are two types of exhibitions. One is long-term exhibition and a short-term special exhibition. Conservation and display methodologies are very much based on these two aspects. This image is from the exhibition called Peacock in the Desert, the Royal Arts of the Jodhpur, India. This was a special exhibition organized by the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston, in collaboration with Mehrangarh Museum Trust, Jodhpur, in 2018 and 19, in which around 250 extraordinary objects of 5 centuries were on display outside their palace setting for the very first time. Out of 250 objects, around 60 objects were textiles. I feel fortunate that I was part of this exhibition as textile conservation consultant for the conservation of these textile objects in 2016 and 17. So generally in museum exhibitions in terms of textiles, we mostly see objects made of 5 basic materials. Those are like cotton, silk, wool, metallic threads, and leather. We can also find some materials like hair, skin, paper, glass, beads, pearls, etc., depending upon the collection and its relation with the community. And hello, yeah, it's showing. Depending upon the community collection and its relation with the community and the religion it belongs to. They are woven, embroidered, appliqued, or painted. So basically, these textiles are a combination of organic and inorganic materials. The collection can be of a group of flat textiles or three-dimensional textiles. So like this is a three-dimensional textiles or like women's costumes. Oh, why it is not moving? It's not going further. Pratibha, can you see that it is going moving further?
Still.
Hi.
No, ma'am, it's not moving. It's still.
It's still.
It's still on my computer. I don't know about
Yeah,
others.
it's still in my
Okay.
computer also. I don't know how it is
Okay.
happening.
I have to check. Chandana is there. Chandana? Okay, ma'am. Just give a second. I will
Yeah,
check
sure.
it. Uh,
Should I share it again?
Yes, ma'am. You can share it again.
Yeah, I'll do that. How to disconnect it?
Just stop sharing.
Yeah,
It's visible
stop.
on screen. Yes.
Yeah, application.
Yes. Window application.
Now it's visible.
No, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Now it's visible, ma'am.
Yeah. So I was telling about the Peacock in the Desert exhibition. So this is a woman's costume. So we have we get in museums to do conservation of these kind of objects embroidered, and so there are men's costumes, and then there are headgears, there are accessories or court insignias, tents. There are outdoor furnishings, indoor furnishings, and there are also processional accoutrements like palanquins, uh, palanquin covers, processional standards, animal trappings, and flags, etc. So all these overall, all these textile and clothing objects and stories behind these objects form a cultural heritage. So cultural heritage generally consists of the products and processes of culture that are uh, preserved and passed on through generations. And today we will discuss one aspect of cultural heritage, that is textile heritage and its conservation. Ah, hello, Pratibha.
What happened, ma'am?
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's not moving further again. So should I share it again or what's happening? I don't know.
Ma'am, maybe there is internet issue. Maybe.
I'll just check. Give me a second, actually.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sharing it again. I think in this
Okay.
time it will be not be a problem. Is it visible, Pratibha, now?
Yes, ma'am. It's visible.
Yes.
You can.
Yeah. So I was talking about that all these traditional textiles and all these processional objects have stories behind it, and they form a cultural heritage. And today we are going to talk about textile heritage. So textile heritage, as per the UNESCO definition, cultural heritage is of two types: intangible heritage and tangible heritage. Intangible heritage are transmitted from generation to generation as practices and oral traditions and beliefs, etc. On the basis of, on the other hand, tangible heritage are museum artifacts, monuments, archaeological sites, etc. Uh, And most of these textiles, like when you see this picture, this is a vintage photograph, elephant decked up for procession in Jodhpur. So generally in museums, we find paintings, photographs, and sculptures along with the textiles. They tell story of textiles and its use. They also depict the tangible and intangible information. Like in this vintage photograph, you can see the elephant is tamed on his back, and on his back, a hoda is tied, and there is an elephant rider uh, dressed in local dress as per his community, holding an ankush. And most important feature is that elephant is decked up with beautiful velvet karchobi embroidered jhool, and also very interesting head cover and a jewelry. All these aspects are very much important to study because these are also living traditions, and in exhibitions and museums they showcase narrative linking of these tangible and intangible informations. So for display we need elephant mannequin, and all the textiles are treated at the pressure points during their conservation and provided with support so that they should not damage while on display due to any factors of deterioration. So these exhibitions are planned 3 to 5 years ahead, depending upon the conservation requirements and display methodologies. Various professionals like curators, art historians, designers, and conservators of the multiple subjects work as a team behind the scene. As textile conservator, my job is to do conservation of textiles so that they can be safely displayed or stored in the safe environment for future generations. So what is textile conservation? Simmi has already described in detail a lot, and must say that Rohini has shown very good examples that why we should preserve all these textiles. So that's how, and I'm also giving a very few points that archaeological evidences suggest that textile production in India, in South Asia, was underway as far as 6000 BCE. However, despite 8,000 years of textile history, the cultural beliefs and tropical climate condition of the region, they have destroyed any actual cloth from India's ancient past. As a result, the oldest surviving examples of Indian fabric dates back only about 2000 years. The study of India's early textile history therefore relies heavily on alternative sources, including sculptures, paintings, and ancient texts. Therefore, it is imperative to preserve and document the museum and heirloom textile collection of India for future generations. Simmi has already described, but again, there will be a little bit repetition of all the previous presentations. But just a few things I would like to say, that the textile conservation refers to the processes by which textiles are cared for and maintained to be preserved from future damages. The field falls under the category of art conservation. Art conservation, all measures and actions aimed at safeguarding tangible cultural heritage while ensuring its accessibility to present and future generations. Conservation embraces preventive conservation, remedial conservation, and restoration. All measures and actions should respect the significance and physical properties of the cultural heritage item. One of the principal ethical guidelines for conservators is to focus on stabilizing remaining original material rather than restoration of the original appearance. So as a textile conservation as profession, so that is very much important. I would like to a little bit discuss about this point, because I'll discuss briefly what is my journey in this field, so that you can also plan that in India what all you can do in art conservation. So in India we don't have any specialized conservation institute which specializes only for textile conservation. So like I did my BSc in zoology, botany and chemistry, and then after that I did a course in conservation of art objects. There also textile was a part of along with the other artifacts from NRLC, and then Masters in Conservation and Restoration of Works of Art Objects from National Museum Institute, New Delhi. Then almost for 10 years, I worked with the organization called INTAC, and even established a specialized textile conservation unit there. So for the specialization, what I did, I tried for the scholarships, and then I applied for the internships. So for specialization, I got an opportunity to work with British Museum Conservation Laboratory. I received Charles Wallace India Trust to support my stay and other things. So that is very important. And then in 2014, I received a joint funding from Eurasia Pacific UniNet and a National Museum Institute to do internship at University of Applied Arts, Vienna. Then last year, as they have, Simmi has already told, that we got a scholarship for to do an international training projects in textile and costumes. Over a period of time, and it's been from 2011 onwards, I'm working as an independent textile conservation consultant, and I'm associated, I would like to give some names because I'm associated with City Palace Museum Udaipur, City Palace Museum Jaipur, Mehrangarh Museum Trust for conservation of royal textiles, their documentation, storage, and publication, and so many things. I also have worked with various private organizations such as Gyan Museum Jaipur, SMM Theatre Craft Museum, etc. So now I'll discuss the basic remedial and textile conservation processes in textile conservation. First thing, I do the establishment of textile conservation unit in the museum premises with proper light, ventilation, tables, equipments, and all these things. Then we do examination and documentation of textiles in detail. We do written and photographic documentation at each step of the textile conservation and digitize all the data for future reference. It is very necessary to do historical documentation at each step of the textile conservation and because that gives an idea of age of that textile and fashion of that period. Most important, what we do is document each and every deterioration, and documentation of damages occurred along with their location is most important part, as all the remedial conservation processes will based on the condition of the object. Some more examples of textile deteriorations are there. So there are unscientific previous restorations, because people do machine stitching. Sometimes they machine stitch the old textiles. There are faulty mountings that can deteriorate the textiles. The use of metal pins, perspiration stains. If it is not kept properly, there can be a fungus infestations. So all these things are there. So we document each and everything. We also document technical details of the textile objects, like type of weave count. We do microscopic analysis of weave as well. We make sure that all information is digitized. Similarly, recording all the local names of the fabric, costume, and embroidery materials. Stitch analysis and stitch per inch analysis. We record each and everything, because that will that are really directly related to the following things about the seam strength, stitch appearance, and stitch elasticity, because it is very important that we should know that what will happen with the textile when it will be on a long-term display. We do seam analysis, pattern making, motifs and subjects depicted. We also do scientific documentation. We do pH test to check the acidity of the textiles, because it is very important. Before cleaning, we would like to make sure that if it needs a wet cleaning or not, how much cleaning will be required. All these things we decide first. We also sometimes it becomes very difficult to identify that it is silk or cotton or something. Then we do a microscopic analysis and identify things. We also do digital microscopic analysis for the weave structure, thickness of the yarns, and All these things are very, very much important. Other things are very much important in terms of documentation is related to preventive conservation, because we regularly monitor relative humidity in display galleries and storage areas through data loggers. And we also regularly monitor the light levels, relatively light levels in the display galleries to prevent them from light fading. So these are the basic points related to the documentation that are very much necessary. Next step is remedial conservation, because okay, this object is going for a display. So basic first thing is important, that when we have analyzed, there is a dust and dirt on the object. So we do mechanical cleanings. Generally, we use vulcanized erasers or vacuum cleaners or micro vacuum cleaners for the cleaning of textiles. If object has any tarnishing or it has dust and dirt and grime, then we try to do a solvent cleaning. Sometimes there are stains, as already Simmi has mentioned, that if there is a stain, we are very careful about it, that we don't try to remove it completely. We minimize the stain, but we are very much concerned about the fabric structure. That is also very much important for us. So what we do, we try to reduce the stains from the textile fabrics, whereas possible, we won't try to remove the stains completely, as with aging, the stains settles within the textile fibers. Moreover, the stains, colored stains, which are developed during any rituals, ceremonies, festivals, or accidents, we preserve them as it is, as these are the part of the history and has sentimental values. Next step is crease removals and flattening. Generally, we use humidifiers and then small glass weights, or sometimes we use Gore-Tex for this purpose. Dyeing threads and support fabric. At the end, the structural re-strengthening of the textile is done wherever necessary. The priority is given to the conservation stitches. We dye stitching threads and fabrics in lab using conservation grade dyes and methodologies. And we do wrist stitch repairs. That's an example of a stitch repair before and after. Another example of a series that you have seen earlier with the elephant, a head cover, before and after. So sometimes, generally, I try to avoid doing adhesive linings, but whenever it is required, we do adhesive lining. There are a range of adhesives which are available in the conservation shop, available in conservation shops. But I try to do a spray application rather than applying through brush. So that is the main thing. And then, like after conservation, you can see that another important part becomes the display. See, this fragment is very fragile. And this was a part of an elephant trapping. So we have tried to display it like this, so that it should be like in the similar form and story. It should look like a meaningful object. That's what we try to do. And some more display images. So that's how it starts. Everything in conservation, in museums, it starts with the exhibition, and I'm ending it with the exhibition. So this is the last slide of my presentation. Almost again, during conservation and after conservation, it is displayed. So that's how it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smita, for
sharing.
For sharing your conservator. And this will definitely help our students a lot, and they will get an insight of how they can start their career and how they have to manage the responsibilities and everything. Thank you, ma'am.
Irony is this, that in India, we don't have any master's program in textile conservation. Like Lady Irwin College, they have a textile conservation, but that is also an optional subject. So again, it should be like a 2-year program only dedicated to the textile conservation. That is important. That is very much important. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. This is very important as they are our heritage things and we must know how to preserve them.
Yeah, every museum has lots of textiles and they need conservation, and there are very handful textile conservators in India. So it is very much important that the youngsters and the universities should take up this as a project, and they should have a master's program in textile conservation. I always say this thing, and we have done one wonderful workshop with IIS University last year. I think Simmi remember that it is very much, it's an irony that we have such a history of textile, old, oldest and ancient textile history in India, and every museum has a very good pieces, and we don't have textile conservators. So it is very, very, very much important.
All this helps, home
Ma'am,
science
I think
colleges,
if you take
especially
the
where
initiative, we will be there to
we can
start
begin.
the course in textile conservation.
Yeah, very much
We are
important. Like,
there.
it should be like you have already conservation, like you have already 1 year program, but it should not be like you have to read home science and other things together. It should be only
No,
textile
no.
conservation.
It is
Yeah,
all papers related to textile, because
yeah.
that is what we
Yes.
feel in MSc program. We are doing dyeing and printing. We do fabric science.
Mm-hmm.
We do fiber science. We are doing construction, as in
Mm-hmm.
terms of pattern making and all. So
Mm-hmm.
these are the support papers, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So probably even world textiles, traditional textiles, what we are studying. So that was the reason. Only thing is ki calling it masters in fabric and apparel science. Even if we today change the name to textile conservation, I am 100% sure, this is going to be a hit program. But this is the
Yes,
idea, ma'am, to you also, because your masters is also same
because
like what we do. Your textiles and clothing is also same. You have science papers, you have construction papers, you have history papers. Maybe we just need to look at it, what kind of art
you need
history we can
art history
incorporate.
and
Yeah,
mythology also. So art history and mythology, both the things required, and then you
bilkul.
have to think about that it should be registered under conservation and mythology section in UGC. That is also
Right,
very
right.
important.
Yeah.
Yes. Can we have a question answer round now, ma'am?
Yes.
Yeah, please shoot.
There are many questions in chat box. I think it's visible on your screen also. Preeti Sodhi asked, "What is the biggest threat to conserving textiles?" What is the biggest threat to conserving textiles, ma'am?
Threat.
Yes, ma'am.
Uh,
What is the biggest
uh,
threat to conservating? Natural agents, whether you talk about
Conserve.
humidity, you
Yeah.
talk about
Okay.
temperature, you talk about light.
Yes.
I feel these are the three main culprits. I am sure Smita can
I
agree
feel,
with that,
yeah,
because
I feel beyond this,
most
the
of
man, the human being is the most
handling, handling also.
handling, because the
Man
way they
himself.
kept the textiles, the way they are handling textiles, uh, that is a
Yeah,
human being is the more damaging
dangerous.
factors for
Next
textiles.
question.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Next question is from Simar Prabkar, ma'am. I have a silk sari which is wearing out for the points of intersection of silk and zari. What can I do to avoid this? Ma'am, it's visible on your screen. You can read that also.
It
Uh,
is.
I have a
Smita, you
silk
take.
sari which is wearing out from
See, with the age, if
silk and
textile is damaging, then yeah, uh, uh, textile and zari, it is damaging because you have kept it in folds actually for a longer duration.
okay.
If you're changing the folds, then it is things which are damaged that cannot be rectified. That can be only rectified by restoration, remedial conservation. But for the preventive conservation, what you can do for other saris, that you can change the folds of all these saris like after 3 months or 6 months, and do a little bit airing and keep it in the like it should have some padding in between the layers. That is also very much
Yes.
important.
Like the image
And
I have shown,
where when we are folding the textile, it
Palak
should be
Chandel.
padded with some cotton cloth or with,
Cotton cloth, yes.
yeah. So that is the safest thing to do between the
Don't keep
layers.
under pressure. Don't keep under
Yes.
pressure. Yeah. And don't keep under
Okay.
pressure.
And
Keep
nowadays,
change
like,
the
all
folds.
these
Don't keep under pressure.
acid-free
Keep padding.
acid-free papers are
Acid-free tissue
available, or
paper.
tissue papers are
Okay.
available in the market. You can buy it from there. But then there is one organization, it's CTS in Delhi. You can buy it from there. They have archival quality tissue papers, and because sometimes if you're using all the commercial grade papers, they also impart acidity in textile objects, so that will degrade the fibers. So that becomes difficult.
Thank you. Next question is from Palak Chandel. Is there any government or private institute for conserving textile heritage?
Government, every museum has a conservation laboratories, but they are trained, mostly they are trained, like they are doing conservation themselves only. I'm working with the private museums actually. Private museum, and then there is a intac is there. There are some private conservators who are working in Delhi or in different states also. So that's what I'm saying, that textile conservation is a very specialized field, but you will find conservators in museums.
Yeah.
Okay.
Palak, if you are asking
Next
for
question is
education,
from
we don't have.
Ashna.
Where is her question? Ashna's
Muskan
question?
Prashar. Next question is from
How to find whether that
Ashna is, I think Muskan. Yes. How to find whether that particular textile is of any value or not for preservation?
I think it all, like, if we look at our mother's trousseau and we even look at our trousseau, so any textile is precious,
Yeah.
because we any handmade textiles is
Yeah.
precious. So that has been crafted with so much of love, and there's so much of hard work that has gone into it. You just see ikat, you can see baluchari,
yeah.
you can see brocades. So even all of our textiles involve so much of tedious, that has been made through the tedious process, that all are valuable and all needs to be preserved. That is the purpose of showing my heirloom, because it has such a beautiful story. Whenever I used to see that piece, I was amazed, I was enthralled, and it was almost 150 years old. Like, so I was just assuming the skill my grandmother had at that time, and just keeping it and preserving it is a main task. And I think that is what left to us to take it to our further generations. So that is very important. I think each textile is precious, what we are wearing is precious. So we need to take care how we should wash them, how we should
Sure. Yes.
I think
Yes.
I hope I've answered that.
Yeah, perfect.
Yes.
Yes. Next question is from Ashna Ansari. What was your experience while you restore or conserve your first textile? And what,
It's to
ma'am,
me.
what was
Smita
your
should answer.
Yeah.
experience? Maybe.
uh,
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
I did I started my career in 1999, and after studying and all these things, I first conserved one Pichwai painting at Intact. That was my first object, and it was around 12 feet by 12 feet Pichwai painting, and it was tattered and uh, it was in very bad shape. So it took around 2 to 3 months, I think, and I remember that conserving and doing that. That was my first love, and after that, I have not taken other topic for research. Pichwai is my first love for each and everything. If I'm doing textile studies, first thing is related to Srinathji. So that is always there. So all these painted textiles is my first love, and after that, all the textiles are there. Yeah,
So,
yeah,
I think we are done with the questions. I don't find any other.
yeah.
Is there any other question?
Yeah,
Yes,
there's
Khushbu
another.
Rana. Uh, yeah. How temperature can become a cause of deterioration for textiles? Can inherent instabilization of textiles play some major role in it? Instability, sorry, instability.
So temperature, humidity, and light, all these three factors are very much linked with the material actually. They deteriorate when, you can do it yourself also. One little example, if you keep one newspaper outside, that is also a cellulosic material, because and now we are
Yeah.
coming back to the scientific thing. So that is also a cellulosic material. If you keep it outside in 1 or 2 days, you will see that with the temperature, humidity, and light, due to
Right.
that reaction, it will become yellow after a
Hmm.
period of time. And if you keep it for a week, it will become a brittle. So similarly, if there are cotton textiles, silk textiles, all these textiles have these are long chain of materials. So these chains
Polymers.
break actually. Polymers, they break into monomers actually. No, you can't see it by eye, but over a period of time, they will become brittle, and it will
Yeah.
crack, it will like fall apart. And that is what happens in the museums if they don't change their permanent exhibitions after like 20 years or
That's right.
25 years, and they have incandescent lights, they have like don't have uh, temperature and humidity monitors and regulations. So that is the irony basically. I think it is clear to you.
Yeah.
I
And
think next question
Ashna,
is
how
for
much time it
Smita
will take
ma'am.
to conserve a small sample
Need to
basically is
conserve a
dependent on
small
what the
sample.
problem is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would depend on
Okay.
what the problem is, because it might have the smallest
Okay.
problem, which might take very long, time wise, and there can be a bigger sample which might have a very small thing and it would not take so much time. So it is very much dependent on time, is never a parameter where one would do conservation with. You have to just see what the damage is and where you have to reach.
Yeah. Manisha,
Yeah,
I would like to answer about your question that about
patience
how
is
much
required.
patience is
How much
required.
patience is
Yes.
required?
That
Uh,
is the prime
that is the
requirement
prime
of a
requirement
conservator.
because see, there is an object. In my case, I always say that there are objects that need conservation, and they have deadlines that I have to meet, and there are conservators, those who are working with me. So it's like and then you can't get all the materials in India. You will purchase everything. Something is stuck in the customs. So it's like you are the one person. You need to be very patient, always smiling, and working on an object. Otherwise, it's not possible.
I think
Yeah.
I would say how much love you
And
have for that
those
Yes.
textile.
who are
So
When
you
you
will
enjoy,
automatically, yeah, when
and
you
when you
enjoy,
enjoy something, you have a patience.
you
You
will
have so
never
much of
feel bored, or you would not
Yeah.
never think of giving it away कि बस खत्म
Yeah.
करने के लिए नहीं
and
करेंगे.
that's why I
So
always
how
say
much
that
you love your
document
Passion. It is
document
the
your
passion for
textiles
that object.
while working on an object. Document your textiles. Then it makes a connection between the textile and you, and that
yes.
makes an
Yeah.
interesting impact. Actually, if you are spending
Yeah.
6 months in one
And Beta, I
particular
want to
object.
add, Smita, can I add here? As
Yeah,
I
yeah, of
just
course.
said while ending, you are a pediatrician. छोटे बच्चे के डॉक्टर हो तुम. बहुत पेशेंस
I
चाहिए होती है बच्चे को संभालने के लिए, है ना?
Mhm.
So it is
true, ma'am.
just like that. वो बेचारा कुछ समझा नहीं सकता तुम्हें, तुम फिर भी लगे हो उसको ठीक करने में. It's like that. So it is a layman's language. I always start my class like that to explain to my students what conservation is. It's like that only.
True.
You don't know what the baby has a problem. He's just crying, but you have to find out and explore with patience without hitting. कि मैं तुम्हें बताती हूँ, it's never like that. So you really need a lot of patience and love and passion, as I said. And Smita is a right example in front of us, because I have seen her working. So I know and vouch for it, the kind of, what passion she has, even while writing history, how she finds out about the object. It's amazing seeing her. I have personally learned a lot of things, in that 5 weeks which we stayed together. So it's an amazing journey, but I have to tell you, you have so much of strength by doing your master's program in textiles. And Smita knows it, because it's not that we are not doing sciences. We are doing sciences also. We are doing art history also, which is related to totally textiles. We study world textiles, right? I am sure you are also studying that. We study Indian textiles. थोड़ा सा ये है कि जो मुझे अब समझ आ रहा है इनके साथ रह रहे के कि हमें शायद उसका एक्सटेंट थोड़ा बढ़ाना चाहिए. When we study those textiles, we should increase the in-depth history of that object, जो कि हम बहुत superficial करते हैं. So there, I don't think we are less than, because we are right fit into, our students are right fit into this profession, so-called textile conservation, especially when we don't have any specialized program on textile conservation in India. You know, it is everywhere conservation, which is done as a 2-year program. But when we build it up in our, because I am proposing in Delhi University now to change it, you know, naam change kar do, uska textile conservation kar do. कुछ सब्जेक्ट्स जो कंजर्वेशन से रिलेटेड नहीं है, दे कैन बी डिलीटेड, एंड एज स्मिता सेज, यू नो, इंक्लूड म्यूजियोलॉजी एंड थिंग्स लाइक दैट. I think we can build a very strong career for our students.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I
So I
think
think
it's the
there is some
last
more
question
question.
from Palak Chandel. Ma'am, if and it's I think
I
it's
want.
last one. Ma'am, if I want to enter textile conservation professionally, what course I need to do?
You need
See,
to do textile conservation, which we don't have right now here. It is
but
a
at
very
least,
sorry
like,
state, but
if you have a textile background, then you can do like in a if you're doing a
MA,
bachelor's program, right? You can do masters from National Museum Institute. That
NMI कैसे कर सकते.
Yeah, art conservation. So and after that you can do internships like I did, because I'm also having a
Yeah.
BSc degree, and after that masters in art conservation, and then further specialization. So you can apply in different, and by the time I think you can propose to the universities that they
Yes.
can have a
We
textile
need
conservation.
we need
Textile conservation.
specializations. Yes.
Yes.
And Kalendri Verma asked how to protect Zardozi work from turning black.
I think
उसको रैप करो मसलिन
for,
फैब्रिक में with lot of paddings की वो cover नहीं होए, to protect that it will stay like that, you know, and keep it away from sulfur, keep it away from wool, you know, so that it is not getting impacted. But अगर काला हो गया है तो उसके भी treatments हैं which can be done. But just at home, I think it's very important that they could keep it covered in a muslin, or if you can buy these acid-free tissue papers, and you can wrap it up and then cover it in a fabric. But definitely keep it away from sulfide bond, which is like your wool. You know, wool से
There is
थोड़ा
one
उसको
more.
दूर
There
रखें.
is one more cloth is
Yeah,
available in
Smita
the
can
market.
tell.
It's called charcoal cloth. So charcoal
Charcoal
cloth,
cloth.
you can buy it, and you can wrap your
Char-
textile first in charcoal cloth, because
Yeah,
that will protect from all these
that would save from.
harmful gases. So that
Yeah.
can save the tarnishing. Actually, that is possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
ma'am. Now
Ma'am,
over to
for
Hina.
yeah,
Wash
thank you
hands,
so
wash
much,
hands,
ma'am,
wash hands. Looking forward for more.
for answering all the questions with such a patience. And what I feel is textile conservation is basically how much you feel connected with that piece. Unless and until you don't feel
Yes.
connection with that piece,
Yes.
you can't treat. Like you said, all of you are doctors. So unless and until you feel connected with that piece, you cannot treat that piece of
Yeah.
work, I can say.
Yeah.
true,
That
truly
is why
that.
pediatrician, उसका प्यार बहुत होता है बच्चों के साथ.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So, at
Thank
end of
you.
this session, on behalf of Professor Sudha Katya, Principal, Government Home Science College, Mrs. Chaya Verma, Head of the Department, and the entire Department of Clothing and Textiles, I would like to thank our speakers, Dr. Rohini, Dr. Simmi Bhagat, and Ms. Smita Singh for conducting this wonderful session where we got to have a look over such rare artifacts. I think they are preserved in museum only. I don't think otherwise we would have a chance to have a look over these artifacts. And moreover, for giving us insight of neat and technical know-hows for textile conservation in such a simple and crisp way. Thank you so much, ma'am. And a very special thanks to our technical team holding the session flawlessly. And thanks to one and all. And have a nice day. Thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you for
Chaya
the
ma'am.
opportunity. It was really nice
Thank you.
connecting
Thank you
with
so
you
much,
all.
ma'am. I
Uh,
I think we should plan
Yes,
Ma'am.
same
some
here,
more.
ma'am.
More.
We
Ma'am,
will plan
always
workshops
ready.
also. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much,
much.
Thank,
Chaya ma'am, for this
thank you.
opportunity.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Sudha
Pratibha,
ma'am.
for all
Thank
your
you.